Welcome back to the Fresh Ice Hockey Podcast. Alongside my brother Brian, I'm Andy Matusi, and it has been a interesting week. As always, the show is presented to you by Xenopucks. I don't want to delay things any further. I want to jump right into it. So I'm going to pass things over to Brian right now. Brian, what's up, man?
Not much, buddy. Hey, I actually remember to have my Xenopuck on my desk here for the show today. Every time you do this segment, I want to hold mine up, and it's never close to me. So I came prepared this time.
Yes, sir.
So I didn't find any Easter eggs around the house this morning, but I did find my Xenopuck. So,
and that's what matters.
That's right. All right. So, if you're listening on Sunday, happy Easter. Let's jump right into the show. I want to start with Connor McDavid, which is part of the reason for the Oilers jersey. I mean, I try and switch him all the jerseys as often as I can for each show. I only have so many, but yesterday, at least briefly, Connor McDavid took over the league lead in scoring. This comes after an insanely hot run he's been on the entire season, but 1 month into the season, and I'm going to have to pull up the tweet and see who it was from, but November 10th, exactly 1 month into the season, he was ranked 114th in league scoring. The tweet was from Cam Robinson at hockey_Robinson. The tweet says, a reminder that on November 10th, 1 month into the season, Connor McDavid sat 114th in NHL scoring. He was on pace for 82 points. The tweet ends by saying that he's 2 points back of the scoring lead, which actually it's funny because after last night ended, he still was. But for a brief moment after his 3-point day against the Ducks yesterday, he was tied for first in scoring. So what do you make of this unreal run Connor's been on? I mean, I know we always talk about how he sets the bar, but I mean, this just proves it even more right here.
I was going to say that furthers our point from the last episode, even of him being the greatest player in the world. I mean, if you're watching him and you're not on the same page with us, something is horribly wrong. This speaks volumes as the type of player he is. And I want to point out, and I think Brian's mentioned it before, not an insane amount of goals for him this year. I mean, most of his points are assists, and the fact that he's about to, I don't want to say set records, but I mean, what is he, first in 30 years to have 100 assists on the season?
Yeah, he's at 96 assists right now.
Yeah, I mean, he's right there, and there's still plenty of time to get it. And with the kind of player he is, I mean, he's one of the best playmakers I've ever seen ever in hockey. So to say I'm surprised by this would be a lie. I definitely could have seen this coming. I'm absolutely blown away by it, though. Just watching Connor McDavid is unreal.
Yeah, I mean, with his slow start he had, I mean, I knew he was probably still going to have a 100-point season at the end of it, but
oh yeah,
I mean, if he continues to stay hot, he could finish with over 140 points.
Yeah, and again, would not be surprising at all. I mean, it's Connor McDavid. Like we say, nothing he does is surprising. It'd be surprising if he had a terrible season. That would be surprising.
His run has just made the MVP race so much more complicated, though, because you look at McKinnon, you look at Kucherov. It's just nuts, and I don't want to spend too much time on this because we just talked about it last episode. But he just continues to wow everybody. So, just always want to give out the props where they're due. So,
absolutely. All right, so this might not be what you were expecting. Brian is having streaming issues as far as his video goes. So for right now, we're going to continue the show just like this. You can hear him just fine. His audio is fine. We're just having some issue with his camera. We're working on getting that figured out. If we can get it figured out, he'll be back on video before the show's over. If not, we're going to do it just like this, and you'll still be able to hear him just fine. So, Brian, I know you wanted to talk about Dylan Strome with the Caps, so why don't you roll right into that?
Yep. So again, he signs I guess not again because we had to cut it out. But yeah, Dylan Strome signs a contract extension with the Capitals last year, 5 years, $5 million per season. Sometimes we see it where a guy gets their payday and they kind of tail off a little. It's not been the case for Strome. He's had a career year this year in Washington. Right now, he's sitting at 25 goals, 36 assists. That's good for 61 points over 73 games. He's at a -11 right now, but the Caps goal differential all season's been terrible. So I don't expect that his plus minus is going to be great. He's really started to produce well, though. He's playing well with Ovi. And for the Caps, they're really starting to turn it on at the right time of the year. I don't have any extreme expectations of them in the playoffs, but I do think they're playing with house money. You get into the playoffs in a year when almost nobody expects that you can do pretty well what you please. And for the Caps, especially after losing Kuznetsov and Backstrom, for Strome to come out and kind of lead this team and help them lead the charge into the playoffs, I think is incredible for him. So congrats to him. And I really want to see what the Caps do in the offseason now, because with the way Charlie Lindgren's been playing in net, they might be able to turn this thing around a lot quicker than a lot of people imagine.
I would have to say that I don't think that if you're a Caps fan, you should be worried about going into a rebuild just yet. There's still potential there moving forward. So don't lose all hope. Remember, you're in a playoff position right now and anything can happen to any team. So don't start losing hope. It's not over till it's over. And you guys have the opportunity to have a really good offseason still. So just hang in there, man.
Yeah, I mean, they could really do some damage. And again, I know they lost to the Bruins yesterday, but they picked up a point. I believe Detroit and the Islanders lost yesterday. I think Philly lost yesterday. So it's really benefiting them to be playing well this time of year. Again, I know the goal differential is terrible, but look what they're still been able to do.
Well, that's exactly it. So I want to point out against the Bruins yesterday, they still played well. I mean, the game went to a shootout. So you still pick up that point.
Yeah, they're hanging in there with top of the league teams. So and that's a good sign.
Absolutely. So again, if you're a Caps fan, I don't think that there's no reason to panic right now. Things are still going, I'd say, fairly well right now. So ride it out, see what happens in the playoffs. If you get bounced in round one, it happens.
Yep. Right now they're just, I think Caps fans are feeling pretty good about themselves. Again, they're playing with house money, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, and again, you look at the standings. I mean, yes, they're tied with Philly in points, and they only have 2 up on the Red Wings, but they have a game in hand on the Red Wings and 2 games in hand on the Flyers. So yeah, I think again, if they make the playoffs and they're still in this 3 spot that they're in, they're going to play a really good Carolina team, but it is what it is. For them to squeak back in, I think that's got a lot of people feeling really good about this team. And if you're only caring about Ovi and his goal chase, I think that has you feeling really good about his odds to keep pushing towards it.
100%. I think, I mean, it's a shame that playoff goals don't count towards the goal record because, I mean, it's not like Ovi's going to sit stagnant in the playoffs. We know it. I mean, anything could happen, but realistically, I'm looking forward to seeing Ovi in the playoffs. I love Ovi in general, so I think it should be pretty fun.
Yep, I like it. I like it a lot. So let's move on now from the Caps. I want to talk about a couple of big streaks that ended this week. We're going to start with the Nashville Predators, and they had their 18-game point streak snapped at the hands of the Arizona Coyotes in a pretty convincing loss. First of all, for I mean, I know if you're going to lose the streak, that's certainly not the way you want it to go out, but eventually you had to lose. The Coyotes have been playing really well as of late, so eventually something had to give, and it is what it is. I think it's just all about how they respond to it now. They didn't exactly have the best game yesterday either against Colorado. No. And again, Colorado is a top tier team, so it's a lot of people have fallen victim to the Avalanche. It doesn't mean you're a bad team, but to have 2 stinkers in a row is really rough, and I'm hoping to see Nashville bounce back.
So am I, and that streak was unbelievable. I enjoyed watching every second of it. I think the highlight of it, whether you're a Preds fan or not, was their game the other night against Vegas, where they were down 4-1 going into third. They came back and tied it, and then ended up winning it. Roman Josi scored
that
the OT
unreal goal.
Yeah, just an absolutely electric game. Like we always say, Nashville is the place to watch hockey. Or one of the places to watch
it's
hockey.
Definitely it's without a doubt a top 5 arena in the league.
Absolutely.
The atmosphere, I mean.
100%. And that game was like watching a playoff game. It was so loud. It was rocking in there. I wish I could have been at that game. Absolutely electric. And they come back against Vegas, who is notably better than they are. So now we're going to take a second to tell you guys about our sponsors. First up, as always, the show is presented to you by Xenopucks. Xenopucks they're a company that make high quality, top tier off ice practice pucks. And I know some of you are probably thinking, so do a lot of other people. Here's the thing. These pucks are the same size and weight as a regulation hockey puck. They also glide on almost any off ice surface you could think of, whether it's carpet, tile, asphalt, concrete, dirt. I've even heard of people using it on turf. Don't really know why you'd want to do that, but I suppose you could. One thing that Xenopucks always discloses, and one thing that I want to say too, is I don't recommend using this for a game because it is not made of rubber. We don't know what it's made of. It's a trade secret, and I think that's what makes it so great. As you can see, Brian's, his is laser engraved, as is mine, with Xenopucks on it. They're pretty good pucks, man. I'm telling you, if you have the green biscuit or whatever off ice puck you're using, stop. Go to xenopucks.com, get you one of these. And while you're over there, check out their merch selection as well, because they have some pretty nice stuff over there. And make sure you follow them on Instagram at Xenopucks, XENOPUCKS. Like I said, glides on any off ice surface. Don't use it for a game. With that being said, I want to tie them into our next sponsor because they go together very well, and I'm going to let Brian tell you about them.
Yeah, so if you want to practice off ice, the first thought most people have is, okay, I need to get a shooting pad. Well, our other sponsor, the Hockey Wraparound, kind of has eliminated that need and allows you, especially if you already have a Xenopuck, they really go hand in hand together. You can go to hockeywraparound.com. They have all kinds of things on the website. Of course, they have their merchandise, but they have drying racks for your equipment. They sell their own tape, and their premier product is their hockey stick blade wraparound. And it just wraps around the blade of the stick. It's real easy to put on, and you can safely use your stick on the street. So concrete, asphalt, you can have it in your driveway or whatever, and you don't have to worry about destroying your stick or having a special stick that you use just for practicing off the ice. This way you can use your real game stick with your wraparound on it and use your Xenopuck, and you're good to go. So go to hockeywraparound.com/fresh ice and use the code FRESHICEPOD at checkout. You get 15% off your order, and you can pair these two great products together.
And I got to say, they do work great together. And if you check out both of their Instagram pages, as I mentioned, at Xenopucks and Hockey Wraparound, they've done videos for each other. And check out their stories. These two products, it's very rare that you see two sponsors that go together this well, and they work hand in hand with each other. So again, check them both out. They're very good to us, and they'll be very good to you as well. I promise. And when you go over there, make sure you let them know Andy and Brian from Fresh Ice sent you.
Or don't, because maybe they'll charge you more. Who knows? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, maybe they secretly don't like us. I don't know.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on now. We were just talking about the Nashville Predators before, and now I want to talk about another streak that ended. Nathan MacKinnon's home point streak ends at 35 games. For what it's worth, last night he scored again. So 35 out of 36 games this season, he's got a point at home, but he loses his point streak in a tough loss to the New York Rangers, 3-2 shootout loss. That was a hell of a game. I put it on the other night, and just anticipating that it was either a preview of the Stanley Cup final or B, a game between two unreal teams, and that's exactly what it was.
Definitely a playoff-like game for sure. God, man, can you imagine if that's the Stanley Cup final? That's going to be a bloodbath.
That's going to be insane.
And I should point out that, I can't speak for, I know you don't like Colorado, but I don't care for either of those teams given my fandom. That will be an insane matchup in the Stanley Cup final, and I think the ratings would be through the roof for that.
Oh yeah, that'd be a good. Well, if you put New York in the final, you're going to get the big ratings.
Absolutely, and you got
market.
Two insanely dangerous teams with two extremely loyal fan bases. Technically, that's the kind of matchup you want for a Stanley Cup final. It's not the teams.
You see how many New York fans were in the stands at that game?
Yeah, just absolute insanity. But Rangers fans notoriously travel well.
They do. And we're going to get to another team that had a lot of visiting fans at an arena. That'll be towards the end of our show.
Yeah.
Man. But yeah, no, that was a hell of a game. It sucked to see MacKinnon's point streak ended. There was some controversy to it. I don't really like the call that it was an unassisted goal. They said the Rangers player put it in his own net. It did go off his stick, but it wasn't really an own goal. So I'm not crazy about the call, but I'm not an official or, a league rep or anything. So I just think it was kind of a tough way to watch it end because realistically, he probably should have been awarded an assist on the second goal.
Yeah, but I mean, it is what it is. And, it's not unlike NHL referees to blow a call. So
Yeah.
it just is what it is. But
It's
I
it's
mean,
just really strange. The original call on the ice was that it was Taves from I think Rantanen and McKinnon, or McKinnon and Rantanen, something like that. And then they just changed it to Taves unassisted. So I don't know.
there's nothing to be upset about, though. If you're I mean, he's still
No,
Nathan
yeah.
McKinnon.
I mean, I don't think McKinnon's going to lose sleep over it. I think,
No.
especially now with the streak over, now more than ever, he's just got his sights set on winning a second cup.
Well, another thing worth mentioning too is the people who care about these streaks the most are the fans and the media. The players aren't paying. I mean, it's in the back of their mind, yes, but overall, the only thing on their mind is winning the game. At the end of the day, they don't give a shit about the streak. All they care about is how can I help my team win. And I think that's worth mentioning here because you'll see fans go nuts over this shit, but the players don't care about it to the extent that we do. So if you're a fan, realize that, like Brian said, McKinnon's not losing sleep over this. The Avs as a whole aren't losing sleep over this.
Correct.
It just happens. That's hockey.
Yeah. It was funny. They showed some of the players in the locker room interviews, and some of them, they were all confused because they all thought he had an assist. They're like, oh, he didn't have an assist on the Taves goal. Which shows how much players aren't listening to the, to the public address announcer when the play's being announced, which is good. They should be focusing on the game. But
right.
Yeah, they asked Taves and they asked McCarr, and they were both like, really? But yeah, so it sucks to see it go out that way. But again, Colorado's got their sights set on the Stanley Cup, and the way they've been playing lately, it's certainly easy to see why.
Absolutely.
All right, let's move on here. Now, I want to talk about everybody that's clinched the playoffs, because this week we had quite a few teams clinch. So I just want to kind of run down the list here. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but it is worth noting that we already have, I think, we have 7 teams that have already clinched a playoff spot. So you look at this league standings here: the Rangers, the Dallas Stars, the Carolina Hurricanes, Boston Bruins, Colorado Avalanche, Florida Panthers, and as of last night, the Vancouver Canucks have all clinched a playoff spot. To nobody's surprise, I mean, all 7 of these teams have been really good the entire year. So I don't think that's too much of a surprise. I think the season Vancouver has kind of been a surprise, but after the start they had, everyone's like, okay, this team's for real. They're going to make the playoffs. So got 9 more playoff spots to fill out yet. I can't wait to see who occupies those when we're all said and done. As we mentioned on the last show, the Western Conference playoff picture looks pretty well set, especially with the performances St. Louis and Minnesota had yesterday. It does, like we mentioned, seem like those 8 teams are going to be the teams in the West. So it'll just be interesting to see how things sort out in the East. There's such a tight battle there between Philly, Detroit, and Washington, and to a lesser extent, the Islanders, if they can turn it on. But so I'm excited to see where this goes. But it is cool how we went from 1 week of having no teams clinched to having almost half the playoff spots occupied now.
Yeah, it's been really nice too. And I will say that when the playoffs roll around, I think all the teams that are going to make it are great, but I think the true bloodbaths in the playoffs are going to be primarily in the Eastern Conference matchups.
I think so. I want to say too, watch out for the Dallas Stars, because I know we talked about them and Ottinger's goaltending slip. Dallas has won their last 7 games. If they're catching fire now, buckle up. If they catch heat at the right time, it's gonna be tough to beat them.
They're a good team, and they're not one to be slept on. We've talked about it before, how good they are. It's just they've kind of flown under the radar to this point, but now that we're as close to the playoffs as we are, I think their true colors are going to start showing and realize that Dallas is a dangerous team. So I still think ultimately the Cup's going to an Eastern Conference team this year. We'll see, though. I could be wrong. I usually am. So,
so the last 2 teams I mentioned on this list are the Panthers and the Canucks, and I do want to talk about them a little more extensively, as they've both hit somewhat of a rough patch over the last little bit. The Canucks they've lost their last 2 games. They're 6-3-1 in their last 10, which isn't bad, but their play has seemed to suffered since Thatcher Demko's injury. My concern is, and they put him on LTIR. I don't think he's eligible to return until next weekend. I forgot what the date in April is, but it's like next weekend sometime. And my concern for the Canucks is he's eligible to come back then, but will he? Because Casey Smith's been serviceable in net for them, but it is very clear that that's not the solution for Vancouver. So for Vancouver going forward, I mean, what do you do if you're the coaching staff? You can only ice the players you have, and if you can't get the quality goaltending, I mean, you're not going to have much of a playoff run.
It's a double-edged sword because I get where you're coming from with, yeah, Demko's available to come back, but is he going to? I say, I know you're getting ready to gear up for what you hope is a long playoff run, but I don't want to see a guy come back early, and players do this all the time where they come back early from injury, not necessarily early, but earlier than they should, just to help their team in the playoffs. But just because you're coming back early and you're a high caliber help, yeah, dude, I'm having a rough time this morning. Just because you're a high caliber player, just because of that, you're not necessarily helping your team coming back early from an injury if you're not back at 100%. Honestly, you're just hurting the team at that point. And I think a good example of that was Bergeron last year in the playoffs too. Just because you can come back doesn't mean you need to. And if I'm Vancouver's coaching staff, I'm saying no, not until you're 100%.
Truthfully, and I understand if he's healthy enough and they have to activate him off LTIR. I get that, but that doesn't mean you have to play him. He can come in and be the backup or play a game or whatever if you want to see where he's at. But yeah, even if he feels he's ready, I would really tread lightly on starting him before the playoffs with goalies, especially when you see what your options are behind him. They don't have the goaltending depth like Vegas did last year, where they just kept bringing in guys until eventually Aiden Hill won them the cup. It just. I really think for Vancouver, they have to tread lightly here, because if Demko is not in net for them, the playoff run will likely not be very long.
Well, and at this point, I still say don't play him until the playoffs start, because the only thing Vancouver's playing for at this point in the season is seeding. They're making the playoffs.
Yeah,
that's happening. So the only thing
you're
playing for is seeding. So I say don't play him until the playoffs start, and then see how the run goes from there.
The problem is they have Vancouver. They have Edmonton chasing them down for the division title. They have 4 more points than the Oilers, but the Oilers do have a game in hand. And so you have to, if they can get him back, I have to imagine they'll put him in at least a couple games. If he's ready to go. If he's not, then it's a moot point. But if he's ready to go, I gotta imagine they put him in, because I think the last thing they want to do is fall to the 2 seed and have to play a team, have to play Vegas or somebody like that. Or, if they fall to that 2 seed right now, Vegas is the team they're playing, and I don't think they want anything to do with Vegas in the first round. And so I think for them, if they can get Demko back, I gotta imagine you'll see him in the net. But again, if he's not healthy, then the whole point's moot, because if you can't play him if he's not healthy.
Well, that's my thing. If he's playing and he's not 100%, might as well not have him play. You're probably going to get the same result out of it. So I say let him heal up. Don't force anything. Now, if he's begging to come back, insisting I'm good to go, then fine, I guess. You can only go by what the guy tells you.
Yep. The other team I wanted to mention here is the Florida Panthers. 4-5-1 in their last 10. It looked like the Tarasenko pickup was really good for them, and he's just kind of been pedestrian the last week or so.
Yeah.
What's going on down there?
I think a lot of it was the Hollywood aspect of it. I don't know if that's the right word, but of him getting picked up by Florida. He's such a notable name throughout. Everybody knows who Vladimir Tarasenko is. So I think the thought of him going to an organization like Florida, not known for having big name players until recently, and the biggest name player being Kachuk up until that point. I think there was we'll call it the Instagram ability of it. It was a big show. Like, wow, they just picked up Vladimir Tarasenko. They're unstoppable at this point. But just because he's Vladimir Tarasenko doesn't mean he can just go in there and not put in an effort. And I'm not saying he hasn't, but he hasn't done anything exceptional for him. He's got a couple goals, big deal. So, and I think part of that too has been the defense in front of the goaltending, because Anthony Stolarz has just been incredible. So the goaltending is not your issue there. There's been a lack of defense in front of him.
Fair enough. And admittedly, I'd only seen 1 or 2 Panthers games since they acquired him, so really I had no input for this. I'm like, God, it just seems like a team that good shouldn't be having a
Well,
stretch where they're losing 5 out of 10 games.
there's another thing going on there too that I should mention, and I don't mean to cut you off, but the one thing that has been a huge killer for this team, especially the last week and a half, just taking stupid penalties constantly. Almost every game they've lost has been because of a penalty. They're just taking,
Welcome to my world.
yeah, it's just roughing penalties up the ass, interference calls, stupid trip. They're playing careless out there, and they're letting their emotions get the best of them too, and that's a big problem. And as you see, has greatly impacted the team. And when I say greatly, I don't mean good; I mean massively.
Yeah, I thought this division was going to be theirs to walk away with, but they have allowed the Bruins to kind of back into the division lead here, and now it seems like now they're really going to have to chip away to win the division. Otherwise, Boston's going to walk away with it.
Well, as of yesterday, the Panthers took back over first place. So, but that's because they're technically tied in points with Boston. But
Boston has more points. Boston's got 101 points with their win
so they
yesterday. Panthers
changed.
have 99.
Well, there we go.
Panthers do have a game in hand, though. So I mean,
yeah, I'll say there's still a chance for Florida, but I mean, you got to stop with the stupid penalties. It's too late in the season for this bullshit.
That's the thing, and like I said, I mean, Boston hasn't been extremely, especially since the All-Star break, they haven't been amazing. So the Panthers, the door's been wide open for them to walk through and take the division, and they just haven't. I mean, yeah, if they win their next game, they're tied with the Bruins again, and they'll certainly have the tiebreaker, as Boston has as many points as they do, mostly because of their overtime losses. But so I know the Panthers hold the tiebreakers, but you still have to at least force that tie or take that division lead. So I'm looking to see a little bit more out of the Panthers because we have I think most people have high expectations for them, but losing 5 out of 10 is just not acceptable.
Well, play like the team you are. I mean, this team, right as they sit right now, everybody on that team, this is a team that is built to win the cup this year if they play smart. That's the biggest thing. Penalties are going to be what makes or breaks them because they have 2 top 10 goalies in the league right now as far as save percentage goes. Stolarz, which blows my mind, is leading the league in save percentage, which is insane. And you have a good strong defensive core. I just down the middle, that team is good to go. There is no reason they shouldn't walk away with a cup this year unless it's their own fault.
Fair enough. All right, we're going to get into our tough look of the week segment. Yeah, we're starting to get close to wrapping up the show, but I got 2 more things I want to touch on. So, who is our tough look of the week brought to us by?
As always, tough look of the week is brought to you by Leiting's Property Management out of Kenosha, Wisconsin. You know, springtime is here. Want to start getting your property cleaned up, looking good for the summer, whether it's a personal or your house or your business, whatever it is, Leiting's has got you covered. So for all your lawn care, landscaping, and even snow removal needs, because we still get snow in the spring up here, give Leiting's a call. They do it all.
Okay, now that I'm having more technical issues on my end, our tough look of the week is the Buffalo Sabres arena being taken over by Toronto Maple Leafs fans last night. Listen, I know it's been rough in Buffalo. I know Toronto normally invades the building, but when I see that the first goal of the game in the entire arena jumps up, I have to double take and check who the home team is. That's pathetic. That I know, and I know Sabres fans like to clean out Leafs fans for their money, but that's rough, man. You know, your
That is
team,
a tough look.
yeah, that's as tough a look as it gets. The Matthews scores his 60th, and the entire arena goes fucking berserk because it's all Leafs fans. Which also, congratulations to Austin Matthews, multiple 60 goal seasons in his career now. So good on him, and he's just unstoppable. It doesn't look like he'll quite get to that 70 goal mark that we thought he was gonna, but 60 is, I mean, 50 is nothing to sneeze at, but 60 is still incredible. Not even Ovi has 2 60-goal seasons. So Austin Matthews, the only active player with multiple 60-goal seasons, and he's done it only 8 years into his career. So good for him, but not good for the Sabres and not good for the fans to not show up on a Saturday night to support your team against one of their biggest rivals. That's pretty embarrassing.
That's not even just a tough look. That's pathetic.
It's hard. And I know, and Sabres fans, I know it's been tough. I know this year has sucked in every way imaginable. but come on. I mean, that's brutal, man. I hardly saw Sabres fans. Luukkonen makes a save and the crowd goes, Luke. You couldn't hear it. You could hardly hear anybody in that building chant his name when he made an incredible stop last night. Matthews set up somebody in front and it was, highway robbery from Luukkonen, and then you heard like 3 people chant his name. I'm like, that's tough. So that is the toughest tough look we've had in a while. But yeah.
The other tough look we have this week is Brian's video connection for some reason today.
It's not been good. Yeah, the other tough look of this week is in fact my equipment. So that's all right. Moving on, I want to talk about one more thing here before we go. This is nothing news related. It's just something I always think about, and I especially think about this usually late March, early April, when we start to look at the standings and we look at playoff clinching scenarios. Should the NHL just get rid of this stupid fucking point system and move to wins and losses like a normal sports league? Or are we just going to keep doing this Mickey Mouse awarding teams for losing in overtime in a shootout? Why is hockey as much of a manly man sport as it is? Why is it the only sport that rewards losing in some situations?
Buddy, I cannot tell you how happy I am that you brought this up. And for everybody listening, before Brian and I do every show, we always have an agenda that we come up with during the week about things we want to talk about. So we already know ahead of time. Brian told me before the show, he goes, I have one thing I want to run by you, and I'm not going to tell you what it is. This is it, because we did not go over this. And I'm so happy you said this, because I've been bitching about this forever.
Fire away.
Dude, I fucking hate the point system. First of all, rewarding a team for losing, I don't care if it's an overtime or a shootout, is stupid. You didn't get the win, you shouldn't get anything. And that goes for my teams, that goes for every team across the league, in any league. It's stupid to me. Second of all, what pisses me off is because of that, you'll have teams who have better records than another team, but the team with the worst record is ahead of them because they've had a gazillion overtime losses.
That's the
and
Bruins
they still got
this
a point
year.
out.
The Bruins, 15 overtime or shootout losses for the Bruins this year. Of the teams in the top 10, none of the others have 10 or more. The closest is Toronto, and Dallas, who have 9. So yeah, the loser point kind of drives me nuts, and it sometimes it makes a team look better than they are. But I'm with you. It's stupid. I really think they should just go to wins and losses. Keep your normal tie-breaking scenarios, but go to wins and losses and get rid of the shootout. They need to play overtime until somebody wins. 3-on-3 overtime, you'll get a winner before too long if you just play till somebody wins.
And that's what I'm saying. So, and I know I've heard people say, let's just do continuous overtime. Well, the reason for the shootout is time constraints. I mean, teams have to get where they're going because some teams play back-to-back days.
Yep.
So you don't want to sit there going into 9 overtimes. Not that would happen. So to an extent, I do agree with do continuous overtime, but due to time restrictions, it's just not feasible during the regular season. But
I'd almost rather have ties than have the point system. Like I'd rather if nobody wins after OT, I'd rather just have a tie than have rewarding loser points. It's just it's so lame. It's so lame.
And I agree with you on that. What I do say is if you do away with the shootout and you want to end in a tie, then extend the overtime period to 10 minutes instead of 5. If you don't have a winner after that, it's a tie. I'm perfectly fine with that. But to your point and back to my point, rewarding loser points is stupid to me. And I know there's going to be people that disagree. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're all allowed to have different opinions. So.
Yeah. No, it drives me nuts. And maybe the point system is better. I just feel like, especially if you're trying to engage new people in this sport, showing somebody hockey standings is a fucking nightmare. Like, unless you're a hockey fan and you know how to read the standings, reading the standings is a train wreck. So,
and one thing I want to point out with the loser points, this was years ago when my wife first started. My wife has always been a hockey fan, but she really started truly getting into it when we first got together. And I was explaining the overtime shootout points to her, and her exact words were, "That's stupid." And I was like, yeah. It is stupid.
It is. Yes, it is. Very much is. Yeah. That was one thing when I started watching hockey. So this is this is my 10th full year watching hockey. I think my first season watching it, which was 13-14, I was trying to get the understanding of the game, and I'm just like, man, these standings are ridiculous. Like it's so goofy, and it is. So I don't know. I don't know if there's any right answer, but I just looking at the standings, if you go just based off of wins, it does kind of change things up a little bit. It knocks the Bruins all the way down to like 9th place, and
Well, that's
which right now, as far as the league standings, but if you do it by points, which is what the league does, they're in 4th. So it's
stupid.
goofy. It's I don't know.
And
It just drives me nuts every year when we get to this point of the season. I'm like, how is the team that's got 6 more wins behind this other team in the standings?
And that's what's aggravating about it to me. But that's why we're sitting here on a podcast and not running shit for the NHL. So
I guess so. By the way, looking at the standings, San Jose Sharks, only team without 20 wins yet. They have 17 wins.
That is an absolute poverty franchise.
Well, they got a lot of good guys in the pipeline coming up, and who knows, maybe they'll finally have luck go their way and they'll land Macklin Celebrini, who we're going to talk about in Wednesday's show, because we'll have our Frozen Four for the men's tournament set up in Boston University, which is who Macklin Celebrini plays for. They are in the tournament, or they're in the Final Four. So we'll talk about that a little more maybe on Wednesday's show. But again, I just wanted to get your thoughts on the switching to wins and losses. From my understanding, NHL has no interest in doing it, but they really ought to, because the way they do the standings in this league is like carnival. All right. And with that, just want to thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you on Wednesday's show. Andrew, you got anything to say before we go?
Yep, real quick, if you're watching on YouTube, just make sure you like and subscribe to our page. Help us grow. If you got questions for the show, email us at contact@freshicehockeypodcast.com, and make sure to follow us over on Facebook and Instagram as well for behind-the-scenes content and to stay updated on our show.
Sounds good to me. Yeah, get those questions, and we're reading them on Wednesday. So we'll see you guys in a couple days. Enjoy your Easter.
Take care and comb your hair.